No, not at all. And that's why Simplicity are able to go ahead, take this victory again, largely off of the back of their 13-0 Hunter. Picks and bans for game number 2. We'll see if Flashpoint can have what it takes to answer back, or if Simplicity will go ahead and take this one.
I think that they need to worry about this early game dual lane shenanigans yet again. The problem was you're fighting into a Naja. It's not ideal. Like, you give that up on purpose to get Xbalanque, which makes sense, and the Kumbhakarna. But like Kumbhakarna up against Naja, that's not a matchup that favors the Guardian whatsoever.
Yeah, not especially not in the early game. Naja just going to be able to strip your protections, slow you down, stun you out, chase you up, no big deal. Flashpoint, baiting out the Arthur and the Xbalanque. That leaves Simplicity to take care of Freya and the Ao Kuang. Again, Naja is available. Flashpoint going to go for the Janus. And so for Simplicity, I want to see a snap Naja pick.
This makes a lot of sense because the last game, Simplicity being first pick, took away the Janus, knowing that FaraKrik really likes this god, doesn't want to deal with that kind of mobility. But you're totally right. With the Janus given up, Naja for genetics probably once again.
Hachiman here, not always a character I'm going to say should be selected second, but you'll feed the hot hand, man. If you're going to go 13-0 on this god, yes, we will pick it, we will select it, and we will set you up for victory. Simplicity just want to copy and paste what they did in game number 1, so keep all the variables the same, as many as they can, and just shift out a dual lane.
Especially considering that maybe Faeles wants to play an attack-based jungler, the Kali's of the world, the Bakasura is still available if they really want to go for it. That Heavenly Banner could go a long way. There's also that safety value from Hachiman where you're able to mount on your horse and just, cover basically half the dual lane.
Well, Hachiman will be going head-to-head with the Chronos, most likely, unless we see the Janus Jungle and the Serqet support like we did 2 matches ago. So certainly something to keep in mind. And yeah, here it is. Simplicity just going to stick to the drawing board, or stick to the basics. Poseidon, Hachi, Naja. That looks familiar.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's actually in the same exact order as the last game, right before secondary ban phase. And with their next pick coming up, surprised that they're the ones to ban away the Kali, knowing that Faeles could play it if he really wants to. I like that idea, but still maybe going for a different option for more global pressure on the Ratatasker again.
Certainly a thought process. Kali banned out by Simplicity. And then on the other side, another jungler taken care of, the Mercury as well. So both of these second-round bans, both of these teams really focusing in the jungle.
So Simplicity banning away junglers leads me to believe that they're expecting the Serqet to go in the hands of their support player. I think that Fusify is not striking me as a assassin type of support player, but it's definitely not something that we haven't ever seen before. And Serqet support does quite a bit in terms of the base damage off of her passive. The scaling is really good as well, so you don't need to really build that much physical power on her.
Well, Bakasura is going to be the jungle of choice, so it looks like Simplicity were onto something there. Achilles will be selected for Simplicity, and then Flashpoint looking to round out their draft. Janus in the mid lane, Chronos in the hands of the carry, Baka in the jungle, Serqet support, and Sun Wukong over there in the solo lane. Most likely, of course, we'll have to get to the battlefield to see where everything lies. Where Simplicity have, well, the same comp. And there's a Kuzenbo, so a little different.
So outside of the Kuzenbo, I was about to say that both of these compositions are hyper-aggressive without too much defensive peels for themselves. But then the Kuzenbo gets locked in and you got a watery grave. So I'm leaning a little bit towards Simplicity's draft just because of Kuzenbo.
I like the Kuzenbo as well. It's going to deal with the Serqet. Can Simplicity deal with the Serqet and get game number 2? We'll check in with the commentators right about now.
We absolutely will. Simplicity up against Flashpoint. And can Flashpoint make the adjustments, Taco? Because it's absolutely not going to be easy. StreakUp had such a great game with that early lead they gifted over to him. Can he do it again? I mean, the team is largely the same. DeathPanter on Poseidon, Genetics on Naja. They have a lot of the same tools.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I cannot fault Simplicity for wanting to run back this Naja Poseidon. I think that's probably the core for me, though, is the Naja into the Poseidon setup.
Oh, Taco, look at this, though. Fusify's on the support Serqet, and he's looking for the gank on Faeles, doing his own speed buff, minding his business. Sibi's here, so they might just assume he's there. Now Blink in, Deathbane, but he immediately gets stunned in return. That is a stolen buff in favor of Fusify, and they should be able to make it out of there. I think that that is a success for Flashpoint.
No way Faeles is happy about that one. I think that they knew that they had the cover, at least for Sibi. He was spotted
I think
out,
they
but
baited
were
it.
Not anticipating Fusify to be making his way around the back and trying to contest the Serqet at level 1, DeathPanter is almost always going to win.
Well, this is the natural progression of that start we've been seeing in the SPL where the support harasses the jungler. A lot of the times you see them on the Terra because she's so good at bullying with just the Monolith and her autos. Serqet's even better at it, one would think, as it looks like they actually do take away the buff. I don't see it on anyone of Simplicity. And I also don't see DeathPanter anymore. Johnny finds first blood in the middle lane.
Johnny also did not miss a single auto there. I was waiting for him to slow down for a second, but I'm assuming that he might have had a chance, might have just finished killing some minions, and if he was getting the last hits on those minions, allowing the Baka passive to come into play here, get a little bit faster attack speed going, and I think that's what really spelled the demise there for DeathPanter.
Game 1 was a snowball barreling down a mountain that buried Flashpoint. Simplicity now have to try and stop one of their own, as Flashpoint have done an aggressive start with Fusify in the jungle to strip the speed and the blue buff and deny a ton of farm to both maniaKK and Faeles. Faeles is still level 1, Taco. I mean, where are you supposed to go to get farm?
But what needs to happen is for Fusify and Sibi, I think, to steadily continue applying that pressure onto the Achilles. Make this warrior jungle as uncomfortable as possible. Do not allow Faeles the pleasantries of just being able to free clear his entire camps. When you have a Serqet, a Janus, a Bakasura, this is a composition that Flashpoint designed specifically towards these buff invades, and so they just have to keep that pressure applied to Simplicity if they want to continue suppressing this Achilles Kuzenbo.
Well, it looks like they won't be there for the spawn of this speed buff, though I'm sure they had the timer. Fusify instead has joined Kespainify in duo lane to help make sure they can harass the Naja and the Hachiman, so that won't be a question. But he could always be there for the blue, as there's aggression over in duo, and Sibi's not going to be able to find this kill in solo.
He thought about it, but the second that he gets pressure onto maniaKK there, I think the tower shots would have just deleted Sibi in an instant. Plus, maniaKK probably might have also been on the ready for a sumo slam, for example, to just ensure that Sibi would go down with him.
DeathPanter boldly staying pushed up as Johnny comes running into lane, but DeathPanter will be A-OK. Simplicity considering the purple buff invade, but looks like they fall back, not going to move in on that. So instead, we can talk about maniaKK playing this Guardian in the solo lane, which we don't see as much of anymore, Taco. Guardian's Blessing, not a ton of pressure early. Guardians have kind of been pushed out by this Totemaku, by these early starts. But Simplicity's going to try and make it work with maniaKK.
But it is Kuzenbo, and I think out of all the Guardians you could possibly throw into solo lane, Kuzenbo is arguably one of the more aggressive ones.
It's not a Geb, right? Yeah.
It's not a Geb, yeah, and Geb is someone where obviously you have to wait a little bit longer, I think, before you can start applying some poke damage. But maniaKK's been holding his own, despite being at a slight level disparity to Sibi because of that early blue buff invade, and the fact that his jungler, I think, was pressured out pretty heavily. Faeles has also done a decent job recovering, I think. The fact that he hasn't died yet is really important here because you might be losing out on your farm, but they did protect the buffs the second time around. These back harpies, though, could be a different story.
Yeah, hard to out-secure a Bakasura as he strips away some of those harpies. But look at these experience charts that Doug's doing the right thing by keeping up there for us. Because this is exactly what Flashpoint wanted. The two bottom people in experience right now are Fusify, because of course, and then Faeles, the enemy jungler. It's exactly how you want it. As Fusify blinks in aggressively, but an immediate sash through space and time, though, clips everyone, sets up a double kill for Johnny. Go ahead and make it the triple. Takes down Genetics as well. Comes in swinging hot.
And just when you think that Simplicity are about to have a promising chance or opportunity to punish Fusify for that aggressive blink in, they are just swarmed by a Janus of all gods. I mean, it's one thing for one person to, get sniped by the through space and time, but when two different members get whacked so early on, straight into that cripple out of the regurgitate, that was just perfect play from Flashpoint.
Yeah, my man Johnny was definitely at the buffet. He'd walked into the Golden Corral, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to just be a degenerate right now. I'm going to do whatever I want. His maniaKK barely gets away from Sibi. Once FaraKrik had done all the work, that was easy cleanup.
And I think the message that Flashpoint are starting to send to Simplicity is this is our jungle now. You guys might have had us in game one, but this is the second half now, and Flashpoint seem to be getting their second win here. So far, so good with this start. Genetics, though, cheeky little red buff steal off that ring bounce, and signs of life, I think, which Simplicity drastically leaned right now.
That's something that they've got to make sure they're doing. Their duo lane is really not too far behind, so I think they've got the right idea to continue trying to pressure Fusify, who is a bit behind in terms of experience, and trying to see if they can play that small advantage. They've got to be careful, though, as Johnny's lurking. He wants to catch them out doing this purple buff. He does not have Regurgitate, but his secure is very good. Beads are not enough, and the buff is secured by Simplicity. Genetics played that very well.
Big beats to pull as well off of the Sash. Now Genetics can start making a wraparound here, looking for future gank opportunities into Johnny. Johnny's got to be careful of these left mid RPs because he's about to have some company, but jump over the wall because it's Bakasura, and he's out of there.
Whoa, Johnny's doing it all wrong. You don't need boots anymore, right? When you're playing Bakasura and these other in-handers, you just got to get all the katanas.
Nah, he's a sneakerhead.
That's what it is. He heard there was a pop-up shop downtown, and he went to go hit it up, right? Yeah.
He's trying to keep it clean, you know, keep it fresh and keep it moving, that's for sure. Johnny has certainly been all over this map.
4-0-0.
And the Ninja Tabi completion is only going to help benefit him even further. 28% movement speed, I believe, between Boots and that Hasten Katana
right
combined. Wouldn't be too shocked either to see him possibly opt for a stone-cutting sword, but this game might be a little bit tougher on Johnny with the Bakasura simply because he is having to deal with maniaKK on the Kuzenbo, but
right,
more
eventually that'll be a
importantly,
problem.
even if he survives the reflect damage off the maniaKK, there's still Faeles, DeathPanter, Genetics, StreakUp. There's so many completion factors that Simplicity has to offer from their composition.
That's a good point. If maniaKK just gets some good not regurgitate, but reflect damage onto Johnny, they have a ton of people who are good at confirming damage, right? The Kraken's huge. StreakUp truly can't miss the mounted archery as long as there's not like geometry of the map in the way. So Johnny has some things to be concerned about, but right now he's playing well. As Fusify is looking for the lockdown onto Genetics, Sash doesn't get away from the stun. Windfire Wheels is forced out, gets away from the last breath, and is able to stay alive, but now he's been pressured out.
It's just a prank in the end.
Red buff invade.
Red buff possible invade, but looks like DeathPanter is going to be able to confirm it. Regurgitate perfectly timed to avoid that knockup out of the Kraken using that 1 second of CC immunity on the Baka.
And now Fusify in some trouble as well. He gets caught before he can make the move with the ambush. That sets up StreakUp to find the first kill for Simplicity. A nice move to catch him out, but without his ultimate and without the Iaijutsu, there's nowhere for him to go. Now a rampage for Johnny as he completes his 5th kill of the game. Flashpoint may have stumbled a little bit, but this is still looking all them.
And this is starting to get dangerous right now for Simplicity too. The fact that Johnny has had such a phenomenal start on this Bakasura, part of every single kill that's taken place on this map so far, Finch, and that alone has given him a pretty significant experience lead over Faeles. But more importantly, it's just this is the first time I remember seeing Faeles in forever. I think since the start of this game.
Wait, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't even know if I said his name. What's he been up to throughout all of this? And finally comes over and ends up falling.
He hasn't had anything to be up to, though. He's been losing all of his jungle to this Bakasura Serqet annoyances, not to mention FaraKrik on the Janus, probably been looking for some farm invades also. maniaKK doing his best, though, to defend that Totem of Ku and will be successful for the moment, but even then, these baby victories for Simplicity are just not really amounting up to the big picture here like Flashpoint has.
That's right. It hasn't been enough to keep them even with Flashpoint, who have a 2-level lead in 3 very important roles, solo, jungle, and mid, right down the line. Looks like DeathPanter has about 11.5, but a 4,000 gold lead, 4,300 experience. This is certainly favoring Flashpoint, this aggressive early start. It feels like almost the exact flip of what we saw last game, right? Where it was Simplicity that got that great early start, and a lot of those kills went to StreakUp. Well, this time it's Johnny. And
it all comes back, for me at least, to that early triple kill for Johnny, where he gets a perfectly placed Regurgitate, and as long as he can keep the cripple applied onto multiple members, I think that Flashpoint can continue this snowball effect, but they've got to be careful because Simplicity's team fight is nothing to scoff at either. They might have a lead in the early game, but these mid to late fights could definitely get a little bit more shaky here for Flashpoint.
Fusify bought enough time for the rest of his team to rotate in, Taco, and secure this red buff invade, but now will he pay for it? The Sash has landed. Fusify maybe forgot he has purple buff. Not going to be able to pick up 2, though. We all recall a time when that could happen. Kespainify makes it into the rewind. That gets him away, and now StreakUp has committed too far forward without the mounted archery. An easy cleanup kill for Dzoni through space and time just in case. And 6-0-1 now for the Bakasura.
That was too much from StreakUp. You got to know better. And I think he does know better, which is why I'm able to say this. But that could very well cost Simplicity this Gold Fury. Flashpoint already toying with the idea of bringing it down, but Fusify is going straight in onto DeathPanter.
Kraken's there to follow up, so Fusify is indeed quite low, and DeathPanter has to fall back after that ultimate. Genetics has Dzoni up in the air, brings it back down, and Faeles is there waiting to finally get something done. Shuts down Dzoni, and I don't know if the shutdown bonus could have gone to a better target, but they're not done just yet. Genetics is trying desperately to get back to the tower line. Cudgel over the wall is not enough, and the Naja makes it out.
Skirting by, though, the Simplicity every single time. Dzoni, I think he just should have let it go. After DeathPanter got a really great title surge, whether intentional or not, it doesn't matter. The self-peel was definitely there for DeathPanter, and that was really well played by him. Will end up losing his purification beads in the process, but by pulling Johnny's, I think that DeathPanter eliminated a lot of the threat from this Bakasura Serqet composition, because now if they want to commit, it's probably going to end up costing at least one of Flashpoint's lives.
Ambitious is the start around the Gold Furies. Fusify wraps around the back end. Jutsu already down for StreakUp, but Fusify has other plans. He's been sashed, but a good ultimate comes out from maniaKK. The Watery Grave disrupts, and Flashpoint can't find any follow-up. That's the ultimate from Sibi as well, but now Gold Fury has been dropped entirely.
But that felt like too much too soon from Flashpoint, because sure, Simplicity, they were able to force the reset off the Gold Fury, but now Flashpoint, they don't really have any opportunities to look for this Gold Fury themselves, and I think that this delay in game is always going to be more favorsome towards Simplicity, because they're the ones playing for the back foot anyways.
As long as they're still securing their own farm in between, if they're all just kind of dancing around the objectives and no one's farming, then it might still slightly favor Flashpoint, but I certainly see what you're saying. In a world where the game is being stalled out and everyone's farming equally, Simplicity are happy because they can try and catch back up and shrink this lead. So right now, Flashpoint have to find the right way to apply their pressure.
I also like the Simplicity are trying to take these fights around their towers, because they know that Flashpoint have a big enough lead to where they could probably tempt somebody like Dzoni or somebody like Fusify into wanting to go for more, which is exactly why we saw that last fight kind of get pulled out from underneath Flashpoint, because Simplicity, for what it's worth, should have definitely left that engagement behind. And they didn't, all because of the fact that Dzoni was picked off as a result.
Take a look at StreakUp. He's had his ultimate forced out now, Taco, as Fusify chases him down. That has been the big safety factor for this Hachiman, so without that, you might see exactly this. Aggressiveness from Flashpoint, knowing they can bait StreakUp to a bad situation. Although it might not even come to that, it's really only Genetics nearby, and he's being successfully zoned out. Windfire wheels just to get close. Ring bounce is good damage, but now he's been locked down by the last breath. DeathPanter's rejoined the fray, though. Whirlpool there as well, and it's actually Genetics who ends up falling. Sibi is able to clean him up, then come right back to the Gold Fury.
StreakUp, though, looking to try and contest through space and time, just narrowly missing DeathPanter, but it's all about StreakUp getting picked off right here. Dzoni, though, not going to be able to finish the job. StreakUp still at 1 HP, enough time to trade out for the clean 1-for-1.
Rotate in.
Flashpoint still got that Gold Fury.
maniaKK and Faeles can definitely still come in and get some work done if they can figure out where everyone is. That's why DeathPanter's still pushing forward. They could not quite catch up. It looks like the FaraKrik made it back out, the Janus. But what about the rest of the team? Sibi goes into the Ox form. That gets him out. And it looks like in the end, Simplicity can clean up nothing.
That purple buff's got to be toast, though, and Simplicity, they're just happy to take whatever they can get. Faeles now, level 12, even with Dzoni, by the way. Despite having been down, I believe, 2.5 to 3 levels at one point. Faeles has completely caught up, and not only that, but he has now surpassed Dzoni with the completion of Flashpoint's red buff. FaraKrik also going to be missing out on a nice little boost of damage there from not having that red, so he'll probably have to be more mindful as well on how he chooses to position himself with this Janus. And I think that the idea was there from Flashpoint to look for the punish collapse, but it was just too much onto StreakUp, and by signaling exactly, it was obvious where that portal ended. So all DeathPanter had to do was toss out the Whirlpool, and then they go through and everybody's just stuck.
And that's exactly what happened, right? They overcommit onto this Hachiman. And then I love the heads-up play from StreakUp. to at least try and drop some autos. In fact, he looked for that to play here. Kespainify had the Aegis, and that just barely kept him alive. But he's going to be in trouble now. Dzoni making the rotation. He's got Regurgitate, which means he can go for the dive on the dual lane side. DeathPanter also in some trouble as StreakUp ends up falling. Genetics able to get the return kill, though, so it's 1-for-1 on the left-hand side, as they also find DeathPanter in mid.
Not as easy as it might have seemed, though, for Simplicity, because with pressure being applied in 2 different places, Simplicity can only respond to a single area at once. They're not the ones with the Janus to their name, and FaraKrik, I love the way he's utilizing these portals, just trying to keep it all teammate focused.
And he's also been following up with the through space and time every time they have an initiation. Sometimes they've been a little bit late to maybe where you're like, okay, well, I don't know if we needed it, but I would much rather that than if he held them too often. So it just shows that FaraKrik's very much on the same page as everyone else and absolutely there for the follow-up. Flashpoint have bounced back in a major way here in game number 2 compared to game 1, where Simplicity looked like they were just better. That just goes to show how swingy these starts can be sometimes. Can Simplicity hold on, though, and find some way back to parity is the question we got to answer here.
I think Faeles being on the Achilles has definitely introduced new kinds of struggles in comparison to when he was piloting the Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr, he had a lot of the same mobility that we're seeing between Dzoni and Fusify being traded out, and it's tough as a warrior, I think, especially when your solo laner is a Guardian. maniaK isn't really able to play defense nearly as well as I think Sibi on that Sun Wukong, so Flashpoint kind of just took advantage of that slow to start early game for Simplicity, and they built up a lead and have been largely in control of this match for the most part, but that is prone to change, I think, at any time.
Genetics is in trouble. They'll do Whirlpool into Kraken to hit 2. Execute from Faeles. Can't get the second one, and Dzoni finds a double. DeathPanter and Genetics both go down. 2-for-1 favoring Flashpoint, and they want a third. Faeles has been caught underneath the tower. Tiger stun locks him down, and Dzoni gets the triple, and they'll take a tier 1 tower as well. Another huge fight for Flashpoint.
I think the problem right now for Simplicity is if that Kraken doesn't bring down Dzoni, that Baka sure is taking somebody down with him every single time. Simplicity have just been struggling, I think, to find a response for this Bakasura, and they just need to be grouped up a little bit sooner, I think. But it's tough to match the mobility from a Janus. All in all, this is just being extremely well. They're just spreading the map so thin.
That's right. Flashpoint are playing their advantages correctly. And that time, the call to come off of the Pyromancer and then start aggressing on Genetics was very clean from Flashpoint. That's what kind of sets all of that up, is they catch him out, they force him to play defensively, and DeathPanter drops a good Kraken, but like you said, he just doesn't have the damage yet. Not at this point. He's a good bit behind FaraKrik, one of the bigger disparities between the 2 same role players right now, and that's hurt Simplicity. They were able to follow up with Dzoni perfectly.
It just seems like DeathPanter has just been jumped on relentlessly by Flashpoint. They're just not giving this Poseidon any chances to breathe even throughout a lot of these team fights. And I mean, it's the right mindset, though, if you're Flashpoint. This is what their composition is, you know, specific towards. They want buff invades, and they want to be able to isolate pick members.
Fusify in some trouble, but he's able to make it out. Can't say the same, though, for Kespainify, as Genetics has him up in the air, right back down to the Kraken, and this time a clean kill. StreakUp gets the credit in the end. You were saying you wanted them to group up more. This might be that example. They don't have to rotate if they're already together.
And that's also an extremely painful pick for Flashpoint, because Kespainify has been a decent part of their setup, I think. He's had a lot of really nice, I think, stuns on this Chronos. Dzoni as well, though, struggling to deal with maniaKK over here in the mid lane.
Genetics can't find the sash either, so Dzoni makes it out. Sibi locks Genetics down with a Tiger stun, and DeathPanter wants to be the follow-up, but there's nothing more there. But Faeles with the loop around certainly could be. Sibi's already blink damaging. FaraKrik has no one to PO. Portal gets him through the wall, and now Dzoni is the only backup. But what about DeathPanter? He's being hunted down by the Sun Wukong underneath the tier 2. Fusify comes in as well, but a great sash from Genetics can't stop the last breath, and they trade out 1-for-1.
1-for-1 so far, but it could be a 1-for-2 if Sibi isn't careful. Already used that somersault cloud, gonna have to Ox form straight into the portal from FaraKrik's through space and time. And that's part of the problem for Simplicity, is that there really is only so much that they can do to keep DeathPanter alive, but Flashpoint are just smorking him down over and over again, even when it looks like he's done everything in his power to survive the gank attempts. Someone else just comes flying from around the corner, and in this case, it was Fusify.
There really is not more DeathPanter can be doing, I don't think, based on how this game has gone so far. Flashpoint grab the Gold Fury for themselves, and they're not done yet. Dzoni blinks right onto Faeles, drops the Regurgitate, and Fatal Strike gets him away, but Genetics has to use his own ultimate to get away too. They're both incredibly low. Cudgel can't lock them down, and Simplicity at least keep their lives, but that's two of their very critical ultimates used just to escape.
Not dead yet, though, still Finch. maniaKK very well could be if he isn't careful. Kespainify already having caught up to him, but Shell Spikes quickly remind Kespainify of exactly who he is, and even as a Chronos, you don't want to reflect all that damage back onto yourself, getting put into a position where that rewind isn't going to be as beneficial.
That's right. Want to try and stay topped up if you can to make the rewind optimal. But Taco, for me, I gotta think having maniaKK involved more would be a big help for Simplicity. What can they do to get this Kuzenbo in the fights more often?
It's just hard to get him there in time. I mean, teleport, maybe he should look for an early teleport upgrade. That way, when these through space and times happen and Flashpoint is just freely going from one side of the map to the other, at least Simplicity might have the backup from maniaKK, but that also kind of depends on how efficient and how strong is Simplicity's warding game right now. And looking at the map, Finch, it just definitely feels like everything is in Flashpoint's favor, which is what you'd expect for a team that has a 9K gold.
You're exactly right. The wards are a little bit easier to buy when you're flush with cash, as Sibi is forced up to the somersault cloud. maniaKK, I said, how do we get him more involved? Well, it's Flashpoint who are answering. Last breath pushes him back towards Dzoni, but it's not enough damage. maniaKK makes it out, and two assassins, even with true damage, can't try to take him down, but Genetics goes back in aggressively. Dzoni's got 5 levels on him. Meanwhile, Faeles in trouble. Fatal Strike has to be used defensively, and FaraKrik gets him with the Unstable Vortex.
FaraKrik, though, could be in a lot of trouble here. DeathPanter has made his way back into the engagement, but Dzoni picking up Genetics, who found his way deep inside the backline of Flashpoint, but it doesn't even matter because DeathPanter nowhere left to run.
Kespainify finally completes that kill, and they've got maniaKK and StreakUp. The two opposite side laners, the only ones left to try and keep this tier 2 tower alive, and that sounds like a pipe dream. Up against 5 of Flashpoint, well, 4, FaraKrik not there. There's really not much they can do.
Based on the cooldown timer of Genetics' ultimate, I'd have to assume he got so far behind Flashpoint off of Mist, Wind, Fire, and Wheels. Maybe looking to try and pick off Dzoni because he saw that DeathPanter was somewhat close by, but huge kill for StreakUp right now onto Fusify. That's one less Flashpoint member to worry about having this Fire Giant on, and especially with the way that Fusify has been playing this Serqet, where it's basically just been, I'm gonna kill DeathPanter over and over again. I think that's kind of a lucky break for Simplicity.
It is. So Fusify got to take a bit of a seat as StreakUp takes him down. Sibi was one we kind of harped on last game, Taco, about his build path. And it does look a bit more hybrid this game. There's some prots in there to help him out. And also, he hasn't really been frontlining so much as he has just been ruthlessly hounding DeathPanter wherever he happens to be on the map, right? So 0-7-5, and you can attribute that largely to Sibi zoning him away from any kind of engagement whatsoever.
DeathPanter's just gotta do everything he can, I think, to try and hyper farm out this Gem of Isolation. If he can get the gem online, I think that these T2 towers are definitely in the thought process of possible defenses, at least on that left-hand side one, since it's mostly topped up there, but definitely on these Phoenixes, I think that Simplicity are going to fare significantly better because it's the shutdown slightly for Bakasura, for Serqet. Even the Janus having that threshold to be impacted a little bit by that Gem of Isolation, it could be the difference, I think, between life or death for DeathPanter.
So far, it's been mostly death. That has led to the tune of a 13,000 gold lead for Flashpoint, even more after that tier 2 tower. Let's see if that's enough for them to close this one out as they push down the tier 2 in mid as well. Now all 3 Phoenixes exposed and ripe for the picking. Simplicity all here, though, to play some defense.
Simplicity all looking to play defense on this mid-hand Phoenix, but there's pretty much no one to stop Dzoni from doing as he pleases over on that left-hand side. And I love seeing this between Flashpoint. I think this is exactly how they should try and toggle things, but well, actually, I take that back. There's not a guarantee that they're going to full-on commit to this split push factor, but I definitely think it would bode well for their team because Johnny's probably going to be able to toast anyone in a 1v1 right now unless that Kraken connects.
I would be very surprised if he lost a 1v1, but I'm not surprised they're engaging. Sibi on left side as DeathPanter. Fusify brought maniaKK low but had to leave. Phoenix, though, is extremely low, well below half HP. maniaKK has to use the Watery Grave to create some space, but Sibi is still in the backline. Taco can reinitiate any time.
Kespainify, though, still alive, is still kicking. Sibi just... look at it, draws some attention over to the left-hand side, but with Fusify being at 40% health, I'm just not certain that Flashpoint are going to have an easy time going about.
Great beat from Kespainify, and that's going to punish Genetics. Immediately gets blown up after that Blink ultimate. Faeles, though, is at least able to find FaraKrik, and he's still duking it out with Kespainify, but there's no one to help StreakUp, no one to help DeathPanter. A rampage for Johnny as he finds 2 on the back end. That makes it 1 for 3 overall. Faeles narrowly avoiding it being 1 for 4, but there's the double. Only maniaKK left standing, and 4 from Flashpoint to barrel in.
Kespainify remembered that he needed to go kill this Phoenix real quick so that they could tie up this series here because maniaKK, he's got a Watery Grave, but it might be a far-fetched dream finch for him to defend this Titan.
It's not impossible, but it's certainly difficult as they're going to look for the kill instead. They changed their mind. They know how you win games, and that's by taking down the Titan, attack the Minotaur, and they certainly will. Sibi gets maniaKK. That's a full-on deicide, and we got ourselves a Game 3.
And all of that off the bat of one, not even a missed ultimate from Genetics, by the way. It was just perfect beats timing off the Chronos play, and Kespainify with the reflexes ends up costing Simplicity that entire engagement. Genetics was probably going to be the setup man there for DeathPanter on the Kraken, but since he was picked off so quickly, it just gave the opening that Flashpoint needed to just full-on dive into the backline. Faeles did what he could, but it just wasn't enough.
I think they were right. They needed a Hail Mary play. Unfortunately, it just didn't connect. Game 3 is about to come up. Let's get it back to the desk to see what they think about this tight set.
Well, Johnny showed up. I said before that some teams are, all teams have a different strategy when they go in. Johnny is the man on this squad, and he absolutely proved it. 13 kills here.
With 3 deaths and 7 assists to boot, he was looking like a whole different kind of person. It doesn't matter if you ban away his Ao Kuang, because he'll just play gods like this hyper late game Bakasura, having an absolute field day. DeathPanter was on the receiving end of it, unfortunately, and this is the loophole of that build that we were talking about, where he goes Shaman's Ring early into the Gem of Isolation, where it's just not the right power curve to be an impact in these team fights.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care what DeathPanter's playing. I don't care what DeathPanter's building. Johnny's going to eat him. That's exactly what we saw here. Coming to look at the numbers here, Johnny with the best slash line of all time, certainly showing up late, baby. 13-37. Gotta love that. Me and Tully were a little excited about that.
A little bit.
Shout out to the OG gamers. That's what we're looking for here. Johnny looking like an OG himself. Man, look at that damage. Just not even #1 on the damage charts. Just able to find the last hits and just provide so much for the team.
And the utility also of Fusify, Serqet support. We were questioning about whether or not he could play this kind of style assassin as we're normally used to seeing him playing many more Guardians. But look at that, 21 wards placed as opposed to everyone else. Like, he was so aggressive that he's been able to drop those wards. And between him and Johnny, those 2 frontliners were making it happen for Flashpoint.
Johnny just looking exactly the way his team needs him to look. Flashpoint, again, there are 4 other strong, very strong players on this squad, but they look their best when they're setting up Johnny for success. Johnny does this, Johnny gets a bunch of kills, Johnny wins the game, and everybody eats. That's the approach that Flashpoint have.
So the slash line was very impressive from Johnny, don't get me wrong, but I think what enabled him to make those plays was FaraKrik's Janus.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, again, like, there was a method to the madness as to why they banned it away in game #1. But then game #2, they decided to kind of take out the Ao Kuang instead, leaving the Janus open, picking up the Nausea for themselves. Just wasn't enough. We didn't see the same kind of genetics between games 1 and games 2.